In the heart of the Soviet Union, a deadly mistake in Sverdlovsk unleashed an invisible killer. A military city sworn to secrecy became the stage for a horror story, turning silence into a battleground for truth. Get ready for a journey into a world where fear spreads faster than disease. This is Damage Control, and this is a report on the Sverdlovsk anthrax incident. The tales of Soviet-era disasters are epitomized by the Chernobyl nuclear catastrophe. However, in the 1970s, the city of Sverdlovsk, now Yekaterinburg, nestled deep within the Soviet Union's vast expanse, became the epicenter for a chilling incident that would underscore perilous intersection of scientific ambition and military secrecy. In April 1979, what was initially unveiled as a mysterious and localized health crisis soon unveiled into a narrative fraught with intrigue, horror, and international contention. This incident, rooted in the confines of Compound 19, a top-secret biological weapons facility, marked one of the most deadly anthrax outbreaks known to date, claiming at least 68 lives and casting a long shadow over the legacy of Soviet biological warfare. It began with the silent release of anthrax spores from Compound 19, dispersing a deadly biological agent into the air. Unbeknownst to the city's inhabitants, the environment had turned into a lethal trap. Among the first to be affected was Vladimir Sannikov, a young military officer. His day at the military canteen, a routine affair, unknowingly became a death sentence. The spores only needed a breath to find their way into a host. Just days after the spore release, Sannikov and his comrades fell ill, their symptoms rapidly escalating beyond the reach of medical help. Similarly, Anna Kamina's daily life took a tragic turn. Performing her daily chores at her apartment, she had no idea that the air she breathed carried invisible killers. Like Sannikov, Kamina succumbed to inhalation anthrax. Not far from the heart of disaster, the ceramics factory became an unwitting epicenter for death. Workers, including friends Maslinikov and Zakharov, were exposed due to the factory's unfortunate location downwind from Compound 19. The proximity of these individuals to Compound 19 varied, yet the outcome was uniformly tragic. The military base situated within the city's boundaries allowed for the spores to travel unhindered, affecting areas several kilometers away. The time between exposure and the onset of symptoms was short, most victims falling ill within 1 or 2 weeks after the accidental release. The community's response was one of confusion and fear. Reports of family, friends, and co-workers suddenly falling ill with severe respiratory issues filled the air with a sense of impending doom. The government's silence and subsequent denial only added to the anxiety, leaving the residents of Sverdlovsk to grapple with an invisible enemy. Anthrax, stemming from Bacillus anthracis, is a formidable bacterium known for its dormant spores that endure for decades. Discovered by Robert Koch in 1876, it became a pivotal finding in linking a Pacific bacterium to a disease, founding modern microbiology and highlighting anthrax as crucial for research. Anthrax stands out for its deadly efficiency and durability, surviving in soil and capable of infecting both animals and humans. It manifests in 3 forms: cutaneous, gastrointestinal, and inhalational, with the inhalational type being the deadliest. The resilience of its spores, capable of withstanding temperatures ranging from well below freezing to over 150 degrees Celsius, positions anthrax as a persistent potential bioweapon threat. These spores, once activated within a host, release toxins that devastate the immune system, showcasing the bacterium's lethal potential. Death from inhalational anthrax unfolds rapidly. Initially, symptoms mimic the flu: fever, cough, malaise, making early detection hard. As the disease advances, lethal toxins spread, leading to severe respiratory issues, high fever, and chest pain. These toxins trigger a massive inflammatory response, resulting in blood poisoning and shock, damaging organs and causing respiratory failure. The lungs fill with fluid and blood, compressing them and severely hindering breathing. Multiple organs begin to fail. Kidneys can't filter waste, and uncontrolled bleeding occurs due to the body's inability to clot blood. Treatment, even when aggressive, struggles against the high toxin levels and extensive damage. In the final stages, confusion and loss of consciousness precede death, typically caused by a combination of respiratory failure, septic shock, and organ failure. The transition from initial mild symptoms to fatal outcomes can be alarmingly swift, underscoring the critical need for prompt detection and treatment. Following the catastrophic release of anthrax spores in Sverdlovsk, In April 1979, the Soviet government was quick to construct an official narrative, one that veered significantly from the terrifying truth. Their immediate response was to attribute the sudden and mysterious outbreak to contaminated meat, a plausible explanation given anthrax's presence in livestock and the region's history of the disease. The explanation was disseminated with the intent to quell any speculation about the true nature of the outbreak. The Soviet authorities insisted the anthrax victims had consumed meat infected with the bacterium, a claim that conveniently sidestepped any admission of a leak from a military facility. This narrative served multiple purposes. It provided a seemingly logical explanation for the outbreak, absolved the government of direct responsibility, and most crucially obscured the existence and activities of Compound 19, a site central to the USSR's biological weapons program. In the Soviet government's narrative, the higher casualty rate among men from the Sverdlovsk anthrax outbreak was attributed to dietary habits, where men, traditionally the head of the household, consumed larger portions of meat, potentially increasing their exposure to the anthrax-contaminated product. Additionally, they suggested that the prevalence of ulcers and gastritis among men, often exacerbated by alcohol consumption, could have heightened their vulnerability to the disease, thus explaining the gender disparity in the fatalities. In the face of mounting evidence and international scrutiny, the Soviet government's stance remained unwavering. Denials were consistent, and the veil of secrecy surrounding Compound 19 was maintained. Information was tightly controlled, and the state's apparatus was fully deployed to manage the narrative. Local medical professionals and families of the victims were met with obfuscation and sometimes outright intimidation, discouraging any investigation or inquiry that could uncover the truth. The international community, led by skeptical scientists and intelligence agencies, found the Soviet explanation lacking. The pattern of illness and death, the geographical distribution of cases, and the types of symptoms reported did not align with a simple case of foodborne anthrax. Instead, without access to the site or the freedom to conduct independent investigations within the Soviet Union, definitive proof remained elusive. However, US intelligence reports that have now been made public shows how the American military was piecing together the events behind closed doors. Insights from a March 1980 NSA report, contributed by a surgeon active at the district hospital at the time, illuminate the gravity and immediacy of the crisis. According to the source, the town was abruptly awakened by what was believed to be the sound of a jet aircraft exploding, presumably an accidental explosive device in the lab. Nearly 4 days subsequent to this incident, a number of individuals connected to the military installation, presumably exposed to the resultant plume, were rushed to hospital number 20, exhibiting severe symptoms, high fever, cyanosis of the lips and ears, and extreme respiratory distress, succumbing to their ailments within mere hours. The situation rapidly deteriorated, with fatalities escalating alarmingly. The congregation of medical professionals from various hospitals was promptly briefed on an outbreak being due to anthrax, directing them to transfer all suspects and their contacts to the specifically designated Hospital 40, now under stringent military control and isolated from the outside world. Initial casualties included a significant number of male reservists from the military facility, then followed by workers from a nearby ceramics factory. This factory, situated downwind from the military compound, found itself in a direct path of the deadly anthrax spores released during the incident. Military intervention shrouded the true extent of the casualties in secrecy, with rumors suggesting the toll exceeded 200. The entire city district faced compulsory vaccination, and treatments included a mix of antibiotics from the US, West Germany, and Soviet Union, which proved effective against the anthrax strain. The aftermath saw drastic measures. The deceased were treated with chloramine to prevent further contamination, and due to a lack of cremation facilities, were buried with no family members allowed to attend the funerals. A notable reduction in the local wildlife and city's dog population was reported, as animals near the military site were killed and dogs were rounded up and euthanized. Rumors circulated of the military installation's commander committing suicide following the initial deaths of the outbreak. But the first major crack in the official story came from the newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda, which revealed the residents near the military facility saw a pink cloud behind the facility's high fence. The report included a statement from the center's deputy science chief, who said they had been doing experiments in 1979, possibly on an anthrax vaccine. Following this, the Izvestia newspaper published statements from a retired general who claimed the KGB told him the outbreak happened after someone from the laboratory arrived in the early morning and began work without turning on the safety filters and other protective mechanisms. In response to the revelations in the Soviet Union's history of denial about its biological weapons program, President Yeltsin acted in 1992 to acknowledge the events in Sverdlovsk. On April the 4th, he promised pensions to the families affected by the 1979 anthrax outbreak. Following this, on April the 11th, he issued another decree committing Russia to the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention. The incident in Sverdlovsk serves as a reminder for the precarious nature of handling biological weapons, where the scale of disaster hinges on variables as fickle as the wind. The outbreak, traced back to the release from Compound 19, involved anthrax spores estimated between a few milligrams and a gram, a seemingly negligible amount that wielded devastating effects. Had wind conditions varied, propelling the deadly spores across different paths, or even had the release been larger, the toll could have been exponentially more catastrophic, potentially engulfing a wider population and overwhelming containment efforts. Tragedy is a mere glimpse into the abyss of biological warfare, a warning of the apocalyptic potential that lies in the misuse of science. Thanks for delving in the depths with us today on Damage Control. If you're intrigued by the secrets and stories we've shared, show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing. Together we'll continue to peel back the layers of the unknown, bringing the untold and the unexplained into the light. Stay sharp, stay curious.